Right, in this week's video I'm going to cover basic chain maintenance, but first I need to make an apology. I pride myself on doing my research before I make these videos to make sure that all the information that I give out is correct and appropriate for the people that are watching. And my motto has always been, don't assume anything, check it out. Now I'm sorry to say that I have actually failed you. Especially people that don't live in the UK. If you cast your mind back 2 weeks ago to the waxing and protection video that I did, I extolled the virtues of GT85 as a general maintenance and protection spray for keeping your engine looking nice and protecting it from the elements. Now, I don't know why, but I always thought that GT85 was an American product, and I've used it for years, and it never occurred to me for a moment that it wasn't an international product. I thought it was sold in just about every country in the world. But how wrong I was. Now, this week and last week I received numerous emails and comments, especially from people in the United States, that were having problems getting hold of this product, and in some cases were paying silly amounts of money to have it shipped over from the UK. I'm really sorry about this. I did get in touch with GT85 just to check out what the situation was, and apparently this is a UK only product, so it's not available anywhere else. Now, my choice of GT85 was a balance between price and performance, because I have to say there are occasions where you can get this product in the UK for really silly low money, and my choice of using that product is not because it's the best in the world, but I consider it to be the best on the value to performance ratio. Now, I may have made a mistake here for you guys in the US, but don't worry, your Uncle Stu's going to sort you out. I've been on the phone all week to various companies trying to work out a product that you guys can get hold of, and I'm happy to say that I have come up with something. Now, on speaking to some of you guys from the States by email, etc., I did learn that Muck-Off products are available across there. So Monday morning I had a word with Muck-Off, and although their entire range of products is not available in the States, one product, MO94, is available in the States, and it ticks all the necessary boxes for the use that I described in that video, and one or two more besides. Now, one thing that really did intrigue me is that this contains an ultraviolet activated dye. Now, I don't have one, but you can pick up ultraviolet torches quite cheaply in most hardware stores nowadays. To me, this is quite innovative, because the idea behind it is that if you get any of this on your tyres or on your brakes, just passing an ultraviolet torch over your disc brakes and your tyres will reveal whether or not you've got any overspray where it shouldn't be. I personally think that that is a fantastic safety feature of this product, and more products like this should have that dye in them. It's not particularly expensive. It's just under £6 here in the UK. I don't know what it costs in the States, but I do think that this is quite probably a superior alternative to the GT85. Now, it does also have another feature which I hadn't taken into consideration, but we'll go into that later on when we get into the chain cleaning. And just for your information, you guys in the States, Muck-Off is launching their entire bike care and protection range into the States in September of this year, so you are going to be able to get access to all the products that we enjoy here in the UK. Right, onto the chain cleaning then. First thing you need to do, the chain on the T120 does look quite exposed, but when you get onto cleaning it, you'll soon realise there's nowhere where you can actually get in to clean it thoroughly. So I would advise, take your chain guard off. It's 2 bolts, it takes 30 seconds to do. Now, apart from a BMW GS800 Adventure that I had about 3 years ago, I've largely owned shaft drive bikes for the last 15 years. And call me weird if you like, but I did quite miss that ritual of cleaning and lubing the chain. Now, when I had the 800, I got into the habit of using the Castrol chain wax, which I thought was a really good product. Wasn't particularly brilliant when the weather was wet, but there was no fling from it. It was clean, it was easy to use, and you could see it after you'd put it on, so you always knew when there was plenty of lube on the chain. Now, when I first got the T120, obviously I went straight back onto Amazon to get some more of this chain wax, because stupidly I'd given the cans that I had away to a friend. And I found that they'd changed the formula, and in fact it wasn't chain wax at all. It was more of a sticky chewing gum like lube, which you can't see when you put on the bike. Its anti-fling properties are pretty good, but ever the experimenter, I did buy various different brands and types of chain lube to try and find something that I liked better, and really there weren't any waxes out there that I could find that I liked as much as the old Castrol wax. So for now I've stuck with it. Now, one thing that shocked me about the T120 is that the handbook states re-lubing intervals of every 200 miles. Now, every bike I've had in the past, going back 30 something years, are normally 400 to 600 miles between lubing. And with the T120, I just thought it was a case of Triumph being a bit overzealous and perhaps trying to throw a bit more money Castrol's way, because they recommend Castrol lubricants. But I soon found that estimate that they'd put into the handbook was pretty much spot on, because at about 250 to 270 miles I found that the rollers on the chain were absolutely bone dry, which obviously is not a good scenario. That's where your wear starts. And I think it may be something to do with the engine running very hot due to that catalytic converter, and some of the lube actually getting exposed to that heat and evaporating prematurely. Now, the only problem with this is that you're putting twice as much lube onto the chain as you used to have to do with conventional chain driven bikes, and this for me has created a couple of problems. The first is your front sprocket cover. I noticed after about 3,000 miles that there was a thick, gungy, tar-like substance leaking out of the bottom of it and going over the bottom frame rail and the engine block, and guessed straight away that this was old chain lube that had collected behind the sprocket guard and was eventually starting to flow out when it got hot. And the other problem that I discovered was that intermittently the brake light, when you operated the foot brake, the rear brake, wasn't working. Now, this front sprocket cover, strictly speaking, is just decorative. It's not a proper front sprocket cover, and the actual sprocket cover is located behind the brake master cylinder and various electronics, which isn't particularly convenient because you need to remove all of that to get the guard off and clean the front sprocket. Now, I'm not going to start recommending that anybody should start messing about with this part of their brake mechanism, but I have identified that there's some housekeeping that needs doing here to make sure that your rear brake light for your rear brake continues to work correctly. Now, the actual sprocket guard itself is like a scraper affair in that it scrapes off excess once it's built up to a certain level, but then it starts to ooze all over the sides and down the side of the outside of the cover, and eventually it starts to interfere with some of your electrics, and in this case the micro switch that operates the rear brake light for the rear brake lever. Now, this micro switch, I don't know what the proper word for them is the type that it's depressed all of the time, but when you press your foot brake, it releases that switch and it activates the circuit to turn your rear brake light on. What I'd found is there was just enough gunge and grit had collected in this mechanism that when you press the brake pedal, it didn't release and the rear brake light wasn't coming on. Now, this is all going to be completely dependent on what type of lube you're using, what sort of mileage you're doing. You know, there are so many variables here that it's difficult to say how often you're going to come across this problem. But I would say that it would be good practice to take this front sprocket cover off about once every 2,000 miles and just clean off any excess that you can see that's oozed out from behind that secondary sprocket cover and give it a good old squirt of chain cleaner in there. You will see loads of this stuff reliquefy and ooze out, and it is just good practice to keep on top of that to stop any problems from arising in the future, because I would wager that this is not going to be a warranty issue. Triumph are going to consider this a maintenance issue, so if you take this into your dealership to get it sorted, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Keep on top of it and then replace the cover. After that, it's on to actually cleaning the chain. Now, I did have a chat with Muckoff about this video while I was talking to them about the MO94, and in particular the problem that I'm having with all this gunge coming from the front sprocket cover. Now, they suggested one of their products as an alternative to the Castrol that I'm using, so I will be using that today. But first of all, you need to give your chain a good soaking down with your chain cleaner. Turn the rear wheel with your hand. You want to do at least one revolution in each direction to make sure that you get the chain from all angles. Give it a good soaking and then let it soak in and start to dissolve all that dirt. Now, I frequently use the muck off chain cleaner. To be quite honest, it all comes down to what's the cheapest on the shelf when I get into whatever shop I'm buying it from. But it smells pleasant and it does the job just as well as any other chain cleaner that I've used. Now, once you've left it to soak in, get your preferred brush. I use the Coobeck chain cleaning brush. These things are dirt cheap. In fact, someone mentioned to me the other day that they're now only £1.05, including free UK delivery from China. It's a no-brainer. Get yourself 2 or 3. Now, this brush cleans 3 surfaces at any one time. So starting on the top of your chain, 2 revolutions backwards, that's 2 complete revolutions of the chain, and then 2 revolutions forwards. This ensures that the top and the sides of your chain have been cleaned from every direction, and to be honest, that's about as good as you're going to get it. Once you're happy with that, give it another soaking with a chain cleaner to irrigate it and wash out some of the dirt that you've dislodged. Then again, with your brush, go to the bottom of your chain on the inside edge, that's the edge that comes in contact with your sprockets, and do exactly the same there. That's 2 complete chain revolutions in each direction. When you've done that, again, irrigate it with the chain cleaner. The last thing you want at this stage is for the chain cleaner to dry out and leave that dirt behind on the chain, because that sort of defeats the object. You're back to square one, more or less. Obviously, whatever chain cleaner you're using, make sure that it is O-ring safe. It's not so much of an issue these days, but it is worth checking. Now, what you need to do next is give the chain a good wipe down to remove as much of that dirt and excess cleaner as you possibly can before you go on to the next stage. Now, Muck Off gave me a really nice microfiber polishing cloth. It's the sort of polishing cloth that they sell for doing the paint work. They're $7.99 each. And as they'd given me it, I felt that I should use it, but the voices in my head were screaming at me and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So, bit of kitchen roll, or better still, a workshop wipe. Get that chain as clean and dry as you can by rubbing it with a cloth, and then you're ready to go on to the next stage. Now, as any biker knows, your sprockets also accumulate a lot of old, dried out lube that's contaminated with grit and road grime. And the last thing that you want after you've cleaned and lubed your chain is cross-contamination from your sprockets straight back onto your chain. Now, your front sprocket is a bit of a lost cause, as we've already seen, but we've done as much as we possibly can to cut that cross-contamination down. The rear sprocket's a different matter, and by cleaning that, we will cut that cross-contamination down by at least 2/3. Now, Muck Off gave me a long sort of paintbrush type thing for this job, and it does the job excellently. The bristles are exactly the right length and consistency to do this job. Again, another application of chain cleaner onto your sprocket. Give it a good scrub and make sure that you've got as much of that dirt off there as possible before going on to the next stage. Now, just the same as when you clean the chain, once you've scrubbed it up and you're convinced you've got it as clean as you possibly can, irrigate it again with some more chain cleaner. This just rinses it out with a solvent. Then again, with a workshop wipe, just go over it as much of the surface area as you possibly can, give it a polish up and remove the residue from the chain cleaner and any residual dirt that might still be left on there. Now, at this stage, Muck Off recommend that you rinse the whole chain and sprocket assembly down with water. In fact, I think most chain cleaners recommend that. I like to take this just one step further. Your Muck Off bike cleaner is in itself a powerful degreasant, and to me it makes perfect sense to give your sprockets and your entire chain a good dousing of this before going on to the rinsing stage. There's no need to agitate it. Just leave it for a minute or so to do its job, and then it's time to get the hose pipe or watering can or whatever you want to use out and give the chain and sprockets a good thorough rinsing down with clean cold water. Now, as always with muck off bike cleaner, rinse it thoroughly. You don't want to leave any residue behind on your chain or anywhere else for that matter. Now, if you've done everything correctly so far, what you should have now is a very clean but very wet chain and sprocket set, so we need to get it dry. And this is where my method has changed slightly. Ordinarily I would wipe it all down with a workshop wipe and then go over it with a compressed air nozzle to chase as much water out of the chain and sprockets as I possibly can. But this is where that additional use of MO94 comes in. Now, I've often thought that it would be fantastic to have a water dispersant spray that's safe for use on a chain, but most of the research I've done in the past has yielded quite ambiguous results, with most manufacturers either not knowing whether it's safe to use it or categorically telling you that the solvents aren't suitable for O-ring chains. Thankfully, Muck-Off took this use into account when MO94 was formulated, and it is safe to use as a water dispersant on an O-ring chain, or X or Z ring or whatever else it happens to have on it. Now, this not only makes the job quicker and easier, but to my mind it's also adding some additional protection with the PTFE and the oil-based formula of this product. And for that reason alone, I will now be adding MO94 to my cleaning kit. Now, just go around and wipe off any excess water first before putting the MO94 on. Then give the can a good shake and give your chain and your sprocket a good medium to heavy coat of the MO94 to disperse any residual water, and then leave it for maybe 4 or 5 minutes to allow the solvents in the MO94 to disperse. Give it a quick wipe over again just to get rid of any excess, and then you're ready to put your lube on. Now, one thing that I should have said earlier on before starting this process, it is best to do your chain cleaning in conjunction with your bike cleaning, because it is a bit of a messy job and you do have quite a bit of clean-up work to do afterwards. Now, after speaking with the guys at Muck-Off, I decided to go for the Muck-Off dry chain lube. This is a wax type high performance chain lube with PTFE. Now, it is designed for dry weather use only, which suits me fine. And I would argue that unless you're using a heavy duty winter type chain lube, you should be re-lubing whenever you get caught in the rain anyway. And I have to say, just from the application point of view of this particular lube, I am so far quite impressed with it. And it is very reminiscent of the old Castrol chain wax that I loved so much. It does smell faintly of bananas, but it's not so strong that you're tempted to eat it. And it should be applied to the inside of your chain on the rollers, that is the bits that come in contact with your sprockets. Just a medium coat to ensure that your rollers are well covered, because they're the only actual area that gets any wear in use. But also just enough so that it spills over the side plates to protect them from corrosion. Now, it does dry surprisingly quickly, so I think this is one of those lubes that you can literally lube your bike and then be riding it again within 20 minutes. Again, turning your back wheel, just coat the entire length of the chain carefully, don't put too much on. Then just coat one side of a workshop rag with some of the lube, and while it's still wet, run the chain through the rag to evenly distribute it on the side plates and the bottom rollers that don't come in contact with the sprockets, to make sure that everything is protected against corrosion. Right, so your chain's lubed. The last thing to do now, and I recommend you do this every time you clean your chain, is just go along with your fingers on the underside of the chain, check every single link just to make sure that there are no stiff or seized links. If you do come across any, this is an indication that some or one of your O-rings have gone and that there's internal corrosion on one of the rollers. If that's the case, your chain is now a ticking time bomb, and I would recommend that you get it straight into your dealership and have it looked at. Your chain should now be good for another 200 miles before it needs lubing again, and about another 1,000 miles before you need to worry about cleaning it again. So the only thing left to do is to put your chain guard back on and you're ready to go. Thanks for watching. I hope that you found this video useful and interesting. I'll be back next week as usual. I will leave links for the products that I've used in the video description. There will be for reference only, I'll leave it up to you to go from there and try and find the best price if you decide that you wanted to buy any of them. And of course, I'll see you next week.